All right, it's that time again. Time for a new project, and this time it's another building. Love doing buildings. They seem to be my favorite. It's This one's going to be based on an older one I did at the video, as you can see here in this photo. I wanted to do another Tudor style because I really like those, and I wanted the base to have some elevation to look a little different. So we'll get into that later. The mini art diorama accessory set was used for the windows and for the light that you'll see later. And of course I use a plastic acrylic base to protect my dioramas. It's real important for me to draw these things out now. I have a lot of this stuff in my head, and I keep it there, and I forget stuff, or I can't exactly figure out sizing to fit those diorama bases with the acrylic protective tops. So it's best to draw it out and also to get some of your ideas out on paper. The sheet styrene was used as usual. It's the best that I like working with for the skeleton to be able to frame out everything and then put Magic Sculpt and other pieces of diorama materials over it. So everything's worked out so it can fit inside the base, as you can see here. I've got to keep testing it. As I said before, I use the windows from the mini art set to help and frame and make them look a lot better. You know, it's hard to make these frames out of styrene. So everything's cut out and fit. And one important thing that I like to do is to not have my windows exactly flush to the outside of the building. I like them recessed. It helps make it look more realistic, three-dimensional, and it's basically how windows are. So I sandwich them in with some plastic in the back, and then they are just glued in with liquid cement. And just the frames are put in because later the rest of the window will fit in there. Works out really well. And now the rest of the diorama starts taking shape, or the building, I should say. And you can see there that little strip is going to be for the foundation. My references are always coming out, but I've got some really cool references later in this video. Coffee stir sticks are used for the timber framing of the building. I really like these. They're the perfect size, thickness. They turn it out perfect. And as I said earlier, I wanted some elevation. I really liked the way the foundation looks at a different height, but yet the building's straight, and then this elevation changes, and I just did this with a piece of styrene cut to fit in there. And as you can see, the buildings are skewed, and then they're not perpendicular with each other, and I wanted that to make a perspective as well in the scene to make more interest. All right, so all the coffee stir timbers are in place. The Magic Sculpt is brought out, mixed together, and I fill in between the timbers with Magic Sculpt, and I will also do the foundation stones in the Magic Sculpt. The Magic Sculpt dries in about an hour, so I just do a little bit of time. From using it so much, I know about how much I can do at a time before it dries. And the rest is just doing some sculpting, as you can see here, sculpting in the stones. And as you can see up there, you can see the Magic Sculpt inside the timbers to fill in those voids. I have a little tool here that I used for the stones, and then I use a toothbrush it presses it down, but also besides pressing it down and evening it out some, it gives it a texture, really good texture for the stone and for the mortar in between the timbers. I used to just do this and leave it at that, and that was my final stone work. But what I have learned is they looked kind of sharp on the edges, the stones, my older ones, as I was looking. So I always have this little tool. It's either this little screwdriver or a little piece of flat metal that I use to round off the sharp ends of the stones. It just makes them look a little more realistic than all of them being sharp. I mean, some could be sharp, but I think these stones need to have more of a rounded edge, and it just details it out better. And now I wanted to do something different for the cobblestone street. I was looking at some references, and I saw, some really like square and rectangular looking cobblestones, if you want to call them cobblestones, or tiles. I don't know. I saw some references, so I wanted to try to do that, something different. I'm always trying to do something different, see how it looks. It could look better, it may look okay, it may look terrible, and I'll never do it again, but I wanted to try it. So they were all cut from pieces of styrene strips that I made, and then I had this glue that I bought. I thought it was thin cement, but it wasn't. It's thick. It's a thick plastic cement from Tamiya. Bought at a hobby shop, and it actually worked out well for a change in this because it didn't set up dry real fast as you put it on, so I could work these tiles stones in. And I placed them in a somewhat mosaic pattern. As I said, I wanted something to look a little different in this road and match my reference. And this glue worked out really well. As I said before, it didn't dry really fast, and I was able to add each little stone tile in place. And I just randomly put them in with a little space in between. And it worked out really well, and it was kind of fun. And I was really interested in seeing how it was going to turn out. I knew once that I did a few more steps, I would know. And here it is with the pieces in place, completed. And then next, I got a soldering pencil, heated it up, and just hit each stone, tapped it just to get some texture. I didn't want them perfectly flat because I didn't want them to look like tiles, smooth tiles, so I did this to it. And it roughed it up pretty well. And then after I did this, I was looking at it, I was like, well, it looks pretty good, but I don't want them to have like these little nipples that was created on some of the stones from the soldering pencil. So as you can see here, and so what I did was just get a sanding stick and went over the top, and this really finished everything off on it, and I thought it looked pretty good. Just a few steps you can do just to create more interest and realism in the piece you're working on. All right, it's roof time. Instead of cutting out each individual tile, I did something a little bit different. I did like a roofing tile strips, and I just used my hobby knife to etch out on each strip individual tiles just by putting a groove. And then on the edges, I just chopped it up, like just really roughed up the edges of each shingle tile, so that would have more interest and give it more texture and realism. And each piece was just glued in with liquid cement. And then with Mr. Surfacer, I textured the roof. This roofing, I wanted the other side to look different. It's a plastruck shaker roof, and you can see here the Mr. Surfacer on the other side as well. All right, look at this. We've got it going, and I put a piece of wood base actually on the bottom there of the scene so far. Everything's painted flat black because we're going to start painting and getting into the next steps. I just used white acrylic in the airbrush, and I sprayed it on just for highlights. This helps so that way you can see all the details when you're getting ready to start finishing your painting and weathering process. It also gives a highlight, and then the black is a good shadow in case you miss anything, but the shadow part's actually more important. I've been using for small sections of grass this thick super glue because it dries fast. I don't want to wait on PVA glue because you got to shake this grass out and get the loose stuff that doesn't dry out. And with the super glue, it bonds that pretty quickly. But I have enough time to add more since it's that thick type of super glue. The static grass I use is from other projects. Some of it is static grass. Some of it is from a paintbrush that I cut into little tiny sections that are a little bit longer or shorter, however I want tufts of grass, and I just throw it all into a bin. And I have all this to use on other projects. Once again, the thick super glue is used to add some other foliage. And this is some stuff that I bought. I think the company was called Hobby Haven. I got an email from them one day, and I saw some interesting plants and foliage, and I purchased some. I think I also got the photo etched vines that I'll be using later from the same company. The foliage here, I've used it with the red leaves as well and not painted it because it worked on some of my scenes and I thought it looked right. But this one, I just was going to paint it anyway. So you can see framed, it kind of frames it out in the front here. And here is the package that the foliage came in. All right, as I said before, I was going to paint the foliage and grass, and I used acrylic paint to do this. I like painting the foliage as much as possible, but sometimes, as I said before, I'll leave a few things if they look correct or if they work well with my color palette in the diorama, and so I will not paint those. But this one I wanted to paint everything. And here you can see the paint I used. It's a fern green. And it was just thinned a little bit, put on. All right, it's time to paint the street section cobblestones. And I just picked out some colors for my reference and put those on randomly. I switched over to the windows. The windows themselves, I kind of just painted black and then put some reddish tones over them just to get some interest of old wooden frames that have been pretty weathered. And then this clear acetate was just glued on the back with clear white glue. And once dried, I could cut it out really easy with an X-Acto knife. You can get this plastic from packaging for food. There's so much of it. You don't have to buy it. Well, I took a little vacation and I got some really good inspiration for this project. So during the build in this video, I actually ended up in Harry Potter land at Universal Studios in Florida, and I started looking at these walls so similar to what I'm working on now, and I'm looking at them up close, seeing how they weathered them and everything here instead of letting the natural weather. Pretty interesting. It was a fun vacation, and it was a good break from this project. It gave me time to think about this, and these photos that I took really gave me some inspiration, and it was helped in some added detail to what I was working on. And you'll see in the final pieces that they look a lot like it. So now it's time for the mortar filler for the road and the stone on the sides for the foundation. This is just mixture that I do from spackle, some fine sand, and a little bit of water. And it's made into like a pudding consistency. You don't want it too runny, you don't want it too thick, it might dry too fast because you're going to clean it off afterwards. And I put it on with a stiff brush, and it's also put onto the stone foundation here. And as you can see, that foundation, it's higher on one side and lower in the back there. That's what I wanted. And then once dry, oh, it's almost dry, then I clean it off with a rag, and it comes out like this. So I was still trying to think how I was going to paint the building. So I started off with acrylics, and I painted the whole thing. And let me tell you, painting the insides of the buildings, since they were close together, was not easy. And I painted it with the acrylics, and here's the color I used, but I was not real happy with it. I just didn't feel comfortable with the way I was going to have to finish it up. So what I did is I got some artist oils, different tones there, colors, and I'm going to paint it in artist oils. That's what I said I was going to do, because I could get different tones in the oils right away with the mixture without having to mix them together perfectly. And you can see there's a little bit of colors in each color, you know, the lighter color and then the other beige colors in there. You can kind of see them already. And I knew if I did this with acrylics, it was going to take me a lot longer. And I have so many projects I want to do that just spending weeks and weeks on doing glazes and washes on this was just going to take too long. So here you can see it turned out really well, and it was fast. I did that in like 30 minutes. The hardest part was getting in between those buildings, because it's pretty tight. And as I said, the oils are used because of the drying time. I mean, it probably took a day or two for these to dry, so I could come back and keep working on it. White artist oil, it takes the longest to dry, I think, of most of the oils. So I was able to come in here, as you can see, and do some tones and add some more realism to the stones. And then here, I'm doing the roof. I'm using also artist oils. And I did this because I could do a lot of blending because of my references. My go-to a lot is artist oils, because I'm used to them. And you can see here with a dry, clean brush, I added some tone colors, and then they're blended in. And when you see the brush go out of the scene, it's because I'm cleaning it, because you want a clean brush when you do your blending. If not, you just muck everything up back over the other parts that you want to blend, and you take away the whole advantage you have. So when the brush goes away, I'm cleaning it. Did the same on the other roof, the same way. And you can see here, you can also do some downward motions. I used my reference, and then I used ground up pastels. I did a green color and a rust color. And while the oils are still drying, you can put this right in, and it just blends right into the oil paint. It gives it a really cool looking texture finish. And I thought it came out pretty cool. And here was my reference that I used to do these roofs. And I saw those little spots, and I thought, that's cool. So I just put some thinned artist oil, and I just spattered it on with a thick paintbrush. All right, it's wash time. One of the most important aspects of model weathering realism is a wash, and for sure it was going to happen on this diorama. I use oils mixed with terpenoid, and I just mix it on a palette, and I thin it out there and put it right on. I put it on the first wash. I thought it looked kind of dull and dead. It just didn't have the pizzazz I wanted. So I ended up doing a second coat of a wash too. And here I am putting it into the stonework. I put this one on pretty heavy, and it ended up turning out pretty well. I was pretty pleased with the way it looked. Once again, artist oils work great for washes. And here is, as I said before, I wasn't happy with the way the wash was very light, so I went back in and I concentrated more around each stone in the mortar grout filling. And then for the timbers, I went ahead with the raw umber oils. I made a thick, kind of a thick wash, and I actually painted each timber with this mixture. I put some photos on social media, and they asked about the timbers. How did I get the detail? And I said it was just coffee stirs, and it worked out really well. And here you can see the issues I had trying to paint in between the buildings. That was very cumbersome to work in there since they were so tight. I guess I could have done them separately and glued them in later, but that's not the way I work. I want everything in place. And here we go so far. The mini art set, as I said earlier, was used for these lights. I cut out the middles of them. I didn't like that. I wanted it open. And I used some styrene to make a bottom floor because that thing didn't fit for the bottom. And then once again, I cut the acetate, clear acetate for the glass sections. I made a little bracket, and then I was going to paint it with a silver color, but I said, no, I'm going to use brass. I want it to look a little different. And actually, I was kind of happy with it. And then the light was attached with super glue, and I think it turned out really well. I still had a little bit of weathering I was going to do on it, but so far so good. I was pretty pleased with this. I wanted something on these walls so they weren't plain. For some extra foliage, I got some roots from a plant, and I added this first because I was going to add some vines, the photo etched vines. And here I am putting the photo etched vines. I wanted that root section to look like dead foliage from the vines. Hadn't done that forever, so I thought it was cool. And then I painted each individual leaf and the stems brown on the vines. And this is always fun and adds a lot of detail, and it's just a cool feature. One day I want to put a bunch of vines on the side of a building. And then it's time for the mossy growth that comes out around the edges where moisture is always collected. And that was ground up pastels, greenish olive color mixed with terpenoid. Very thin. You want it really thinned. And I added it even in the cracks of the around the timbers in certain places as well. As you can see here, I put it, and it just added so much more life to it. Like I said in all my other videos, the more tones you can put over other tones, the more life you're going to add to your scene. And then I used some other colors for transition here between the foliage groundwork and the road. And then I was going to add some more detail to the windows. I thought they were kind of blah looking, so I added some more scratches. And this was done with, I just used acrylic paint on this thin down because I had the acrylics out. I could also use the oils, would have been really easy too. The drying time would have been different. And I pilfered this guy from some other project and stuck him in the window up there. Have a German hiding in the building. The windows were put in place, and everything fit really well because of those other frames from Mini Art that these fit in. So it was a really good fit. Got that done. And here you can see so far what we got. There's a guy peeking out there. The project's coming along. I'm really pleased with it. And at this point, I could probably quit because I really love doing the buildings. I went and looked for posters on the internet and printed one out the size I wanted that would look like it would fit right. And just cut out with X-Acto knife And it's a quick and easy, cheap way of getting some posters. I tried to get some Voltstrom late war stuff and glued it on the other side, probably opposite of the light so people would be able to see it. Now it's time to paint the figures and work on the figures. The dragon set was used. I used one of these guys on an earlier diorama. These are the multi-gen 3s, whatever they're called. They're okay. I really like the 30 cal soldier holding the 30 cal. That was really why I did this. Use these guys. I really like the way he looked. So the rest are just supporting cast. Even though probably the main figure is the guy squatting. But they're just assembled pretty much straight out of the box, this part of them. One of these days I'm going to get back into resin. I just like doing something different that I don't see a lot. I don't see a lot of people using these. Everybody's using resin in 3D. So I want my stuff to look a little different. And you can get a good bang for your buck for this stuff. And the best way to trick them out is with hornet heads. And as you can see, the neck's drilled out and the hornet head is placed in its place. And it really makes a big difference on plastic figures. Machine gun belt, these came from another set. And to get it to go around his neck, I cut them in little pieces. Well, it's time to paint. There's a lot of painting videos out there, but everybody's putting figure painting videos out there. I haven't done one yet because I don't feel like mine are any different than anybody else's. So I'm not going to put something out there that everybody's seen. You know, this glazing effect with acrylics, you know, Calvin tan. Well, everybody can't be Calvin tan. I don't think everybody should be. Each artist has their own look and feel, and it's good to have every piece of art not look the same. So don't worry about how yours always look. Just keep refining your technique. I purchased the AK Gen 3 set for the U.S. Army World War II. I was a little bit underwhelmed that the brownish, real dark brown khaki for the pants in the early war infantry U.S. wasn't in here. So I had to mix my own. So I used the field drab for the main color, or actually one of the highlights, but I used this German black brown mixed with the field drab for the basis for those dark pants. And the other two colors are going to be highlights. And you can see I use flesh for the highlight there into the mixture. I tried something different. I painted one base with the dark and the other base with the mid-tone color. And then over the dark, I did some glazing with those two colors to do the highlights. I did this as a test. I know that later on I'll use this as a basis for trying to do better. And then here I used the mid-tone color and then put the dark brown over as like a wash. And I'm mixing everything now just with the AK flat varnish. Here you can see how the first one turned out over the dark pants. And then you'll see how it looked over the light colored. It's a little different, but after I worked on it for a while, they both look the same pretty much after doing a lot of glazing. And then for the jackets, I just used the colors that came in the set. And for the base, I just used the base tone, and then I mixed highlights and shadowed of my own into those colors so I could have a highlight and a shadow. I'll show you a little bit here, you'll see it. But I went over all the folds that stuck out, obviously a lighter color. And once again, in painting figures, the more time you put in it, the more you put more and more toned glazes lighter and lighter or darker and darker in places, the better it's going to look. You can just keep working it and keep working it forever almost. The black paper is used. As you can see, I can put the brush on and see how opaque it is. That's kind of important, because if you want it real opaque or less opaque is how you're going to put with your brush, more opaque or less opaque. See, so that way you'll know what it's going to look like when it gets on the figure. And here you can see how I did the mixtures to go from light to dark. And once again, as I said before, no more water. I used the varnish, matte varnish, for the thinners. And this really helped because I'm not getting tide marks. As you can see here, I did a wash over the base color, and it pretty much stayed in there, and it didn't give me a lot of tide mark look. So I was pretty pleased with that. I think this would work even better on a resin figure. So I'm gonna have to try that at some point. I've got a couple other projects that aren't resin, but here you can see so far it's coming together, coming to life, and I'm pretty pleased so far for a plastic figure. The one figure's helmet had a dent. I don't know if this was the way it was supposed to be in the set or not, but hey, I liked it. It worked out good. All right, it's time for the equipment. Once again, the references are looked up. Got to have those to get everything right. The 30 cal machine gun was important, being that was kind of the basis of this diorama, this team. And so I went out and looked for all the pieces so I could paint them. The Car 98's got some reference for that because they were going to be holding those. You're only as good as your reference. The 30 cal was first painted black, and then over the black, I painted this gunmetal. I really like this. It looks really good over black. The rifle slings were made from foil, from a wine bottle. And then AK pins, I first used this red brown, and then this wood brown. I painted it red brown first. I was hoping to get a different tone. And once again, I didn't. This wood brown actually comes in a set of AK markers for weapons. And I just feel like I have seen some wood stocks in that color, but they always seem to be more saturated with a reddish brown color. And here I'm just painting on the gunmetal. And I wish I would have painted that black first as I did the 30 cal. It really makes a difference. Ammo box from my spare parts, and a shield for the German helmet. And then, as I said before, I didn't like the stock as light, so what I did is I did a filter with acrylic Hall Red, thinned it out just with water, and I put it on as a filter just to saturate the wood stock. Everything's done, dry, and it's sprayed with clear flat from Tamiya. The piece is ready for completion. The figures are glued in place, and the diorama is almost done. Wow, it took a while. And they reveal the protective case. I do sell these. Anyone interested, send me an email. And I was really happy with it. The figures, I always feel like I can paint them better. I mean, when you look at Calvin Tan's, they look better. But he spends more time and has had more work done on his over time. There's the guy in the window. I scuffed up the windows a little bit with dry pastels. And yeah, the final scene's done. Real happy with it. And it's off to the next project here soon. Not sure what it'll be, but you'll know soon or later. It depends on how long it takes.